Dr. Adriana Popescu here with you with another episode of Triumphing Over Trauma, the inspirational and educational video series we've created here. And I'm so excited to have with me as my guest today, Lauren Polly. She is a speaker, life coach, and multi-award winning author of The Other Side of Bipolar. I happen to have a copy right here. Her mission in life is to help others thrive beyond their labels, reclaim their innate gifts, and blaze a unique trail in the world. Welcome, Lauren.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for having my book. I know. I always bring her out for a show, too. It's good you have your copy.
Yes, I do. It's a fantastic book. So tell us a little bit about how you got to writing that book through some of your earlier life experiences, particularly what you found to be traumatic.
Well, I was diagnosed with bipolar when I was 14 years old, and that was after my parents found a suicide letter that I had penned. And it was a pretty quick spiral, I would say, from there. I had been having dark moods, very intense, kind of teenage stuff, but if you think about it, times 100, it was very intense at the time. But a lot of the trauma actually came after winning the label, so to speak, and being put inside a box. And it's so interesting, especially receiving a label at such a young age, because now in my grown-up mind, I work in a hospital environment. I know the label is to guide the doctors. That's the purpose of it. But at that young age, especially with a personality disorder, it felt way more like a life sentence and something that was wrong with me. So the identification with it is really where I feel like the most trauma actually occurred with it, and what I've been digging myself out of for the last 30 odd years. And that led me to write the book of really what is possible beyond the label. If you weren't thinking of it as your total identity and your forever thing, what could be possible?
Right. So how did it at such a young age, when already as teenagers, our self-esteem is pretty fragile, how did that impact you to get that label? And how did people start treating you differently? What happened?
I think that was the hardest thing. I remember telling my best friend at the time, and it was so fascinating to watch her eyes change. And instead of being wide open and connected, it was almost like I could see her physically lean away from me, probably just trying to process her own emotions with it. But there was this distance and this almost suspicion that came into her eyes. And over the years and years and years that followed, meeting new friends, having boyfriends, and having to tell them anytime there was somebody new in my life, it was like the gauntlet test. You know what I mean? Do I know them enough to be able to bring this up? And it was just so fascinating because no matter who I told, there was always that moment of pulling away. And this was after they had really gotten to know me, to have the perception change in that instant just based on this label. Of course, we worked through it, but I feel like that kind of push away or hands out, it really taught me that I should probably not be telling people about it, that it might be something that wasn't really safe to share, and that would immediately get me boxed in, even if I had made progress, which was fascinating towards the end of my years, where it was I wasn't having signs and symptoms. I was very, very healthy. Still having that label associated with me, it changed the way people viewed me.
Right. And then, of course, that would change the way you see yourself too, right?
Yes. I was doing an interview a couple months ago with someone, and he said, "Oh, it's so interesting because you were othered." And I went, "Ooh, I never thought about stigma as that, but that's exactly what it is. It puts you on the fringe of society. You're other, you're not us." And it was interesting because I could see how other people treated me like that, for sure, based on the label. But because I was treated that way and because I had the doctors telling me that's who I was and what I had, I started seeing myself like that too. So this othering of I really don't belong, and I wonder how I can try to make myself belong, has always been an underpinning behind the scenes with me, for sure.
Yeah. And maybe feeling like you had to put on a mask, or you couldn't be your authentic self, something like that, I would guess.
Well, I was very into perfection. everything needed to be perfect. And if I could be perfect, then no one would ever know that I struggled. And I think that kind of mindset was really, really tricky because all of us are really pushed to perform a lot. But when we feel the need to do it because we have some deep, dark secret, that's something totally, totally different. It feels life threatening if someone sees you for who you are. And the thing with these personality mood disorders, it's fascinating because they're based on personality characteristics. It's how they kind of measure if you're doing okay. So I
Mhm.
started to measure how happy I could be or how sad I could be for a little bit. Like I had to really, really watch how I expressed myself because the people around me would go, oh, she's cycling. Oh, she
Mhm.
okay? And being asked, hey, did you take your meds today? Like, there's nothing worse you could say to an individual. It's so dehumanizing.
Yeah.
Luckily, I was surrounded with people who didn't treat me that way, but the look kind of said it in themselves, you know? Yeah, so feeling other, I would say, has been one of the most traumatic parts of this.
So how did you start to come out from all of that?
Goodness, big question. I started really doing more self exploratory work. So, psychology helped, one to one sessions, obviously. I've been in care my entire life, basically. But when I started really looking at myself, not just as the person and the personality, because that led me into perfectionism, but I started to look at my spirit and my soul and my being, whatever word you want to put to it. And the fact, first and foremost, that I'm an emotional being having an emotional experience. I'm experiencing the world firsthand, as we all are. And the ups and the downs and the textures and the colors and the intensities, that's just part of the picture. And the way that I'm wired, I experience that deeper and more intense and faster a lot of times than the average person. And it started taking me into areas where I was meeting other people like me or who were at least more accepting of their kind of out of the box tendencies, I would say, or personalities. And it
Mhm.
just became, well, if you can accept that about yourself, then I can accept this about myself. And if I
Mhm.
can see someone else accept themselves, then that gave me kind of permission as well. So I feel like one of the things I'd like to impart is when you're trying to be in isolation, and this isn't just in care where you're kind of caught in your head, but I also feel like if you're trying to be in that perfection model, that's an isolated spot. You're
Mhm.
not being yourself. You're not connecting authentically. You're not letting people see all sides of you. And the more isolated you are, the more that grows. So a lot of times you have to like, on the cover of my book, it's me pulling back a curtain. It really felt like that. Like you have to really put that aside and connect with people. You'll start to see inspiration in others, which is the amazing thing about this series, right? But I think that is really, really what moved the needle for me as I started looking at other people. And if they had permission, then why can't I do it too? You know?
Yeah. Were
Mm.
there any specific practices or techniques that you found helpful during this time?
Well, I started with an energy psychologist way back when I was 20. He was a psychiatrist, but he did a lot of energy work. So he was the first person who introduced me to like chakra alignment and yoga and meditation and really looking at diet and exercise. So that was the beginning of my journey looking at holistic models.
Mhm.
Meditation, yoga, and breathing has always been part of my journey. Dance movement, being able to move the energy through me instead of like sitting with it and having it exacerbate has been very, very helpful. And then
Mhm.
different energy techniques. I've been in the energy world a long, long time with various techniques, but being able to know that people may not react to what I react to. And because
Mhm.
it's not something that's seen, it looked like it wasn't real. Therefore, I was wrong in
Mhm.
feeling it, speaking to it, acting to it. When really, having a heightened awareness, having a sensitivity to everybody around you, it's a strength if you know how to use it, but it also doesn't make you crazy. It's just this thing of you see more, you see deeper, you feel deeper. And so,
Mhm.
any of those energy techniques, it was great. It took me out of the logical mind of what I should be reacting to. I needed that also, but I really needed this other piece of the puzzle that just because people don't see it or speak it doesn't mean it's not real,
Right.
you
Right.
know?
Wow. Yeah. So, how has the experience you've gone through with this impacted your life today in terms of maybe the work or that you're doing now, or relationships or whatever it is. Like clearly, like most of us, as you triumph over your trauma, then you reach this kind of post-traumatic growth, phase where it really can impact like your choices in life. How has that been so for you?
Many, many levels. Like my career is as a speech pathologist. So I've worked with end of life care and
Mhm.
also trauma. I work with strokes, brain injury, neurogenic disorders. I'm in the pediatric field a little bit, so I work with autism. These crisis points, basically, where life changes and life isn't what you expected it to be, and it probably won't be again, and how to adapt to it, and also how to maximize function. And when I look at my life path, that's exactly what I went through, right? There was a crisis moment. There was a trauma of, okay, it's different and it's not going to be what I expected it to be. But how do I maximize my function? How do I actually eke everything I can out of life despite all of that? And what I learned through my journey is it wasn't in spite of, it was kind of because of.
Mm.
I didn't get over and succeed, in spite of what I went through, because of what I went through. I have a deeper understanding, a deeper way to connect with people, and I would say a deeper life purpose to be able to help other people, speech
Mm.
therapy. And then, of course, writing my book and speaking out about mental health issues from a firsthand experience. It's all led into that.
Yeah, there's so much stigma and so much judgment, and really also like an ignorance, like a lack of understanding, that I
Mhm.
think we need more and more people to speak out about their experiences and to take some of that pathologizing perspective out of it. Like I love that question, what's right about me?
Mm.
Instead of what's wrong with me. We have such a tendency to look, especially in the Western
Yeah.
medical model, at what's wrong with this person and like how do we fix it versus like what's right about them.
Yeah.
And I feel like you really have spoken to that in your book and in your right now, even as you're speaking to us, as you are a public figure speaking on this.
Yeah. And it's so interesting because when other people look at you and say, oh, well, what's wrong? Or they're trying to fix a problem, that kind of thing. But what's really interesting is when it gets so insidious that that becomes your viewpoint. What's wrong with me? And
Right.
so many people, I mean, it's painful to work with people. I know you're in the same boat when you really start digging in to see how much of their inner narrative is all about what they don't have, what they
Right.
don't get. And it's interesting because we're all working with these wellness tools of like gratitude and trying to see the positive side. And
Mhm.
I think there needs to be a happy medium. I think there's something where you really need to be with those thoughts if they're self-limiting, and you really have to do the deeper work. It doesn't work if you just smack lipstick on the pig. You know what I mean? You kind of have to dig deep with it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But there also needs to be a balance. And if you notice that, hey, my life's pretty good, but here I am working on these techniques, but my mind keeps coming from the perspective of something's wrong that I need to
Mhm.
fix, there's something wrong with what you're doing. And
Right.
I noticed myself in many modalities that I've studied actually getting trapped in that mindset. I needed to step back and recalibrate for sure.
So, Lauren, what would you say to someone who might be in the midst of a challenging or traumatic experience?
Well, I'd say first and foremost, you're not alone. And you're going to feel alone. And you're going to feel like no one understands you. And you're going to feel like you don't understand yourself. And that's what really gets people. But that understanding comes with time. And right now, more than anything, what you need to do is just look at simple baby steps that make you feel cozy and comfortable. I don't care what that is, but simple. Self care, we think about this big, oh, I've got to like do a yoga practice or I have to do all these fancy things. It's not. It
Mhm.
can be like wearing fuzzy socks. If I'm feeling stressed and fragile, I pick a special sweater that I have before I go to work because it's soothing to my skin. Just the material calms me down.
Mhm.
5 minutes staring out the window without any kind of like agenda, anything that's just so simple, especially if you're in the thick of it. I mean, I remember days where I could just get up and take a shower and that was like a win. I
Mhm.
had enough energy to do that. That's
Right.
okay if you're there. I mean, that
Yeah.
does count as a win. And you have to really catalog those check marks as you move forward.
Thank you so much, Lauren, for coming on and
Mm.
sharing your experience and your wisdom and offering some hope for those who might be struggling. If people want to find out more about you, your book, your work, where should they go?
Easiest one is my website, laurenpolly.com. My book's up there.
Excellent. Thank you so much for being with us today. Thank you, audience, for tuning in. If you know someone who might benefit from this information, please do share it with them. Um, Comment, subscribe, like it, all the things that will help the algorithm get this information out there in the hands of people who are searching and struggling. So thanks, everyone. We'll see you next time on Triumphing Over Trauma.